everyone, welcome back to the Good Food YouTube channel. I'm Helena and today we're diving into the sweet side of comfort food with some indulgent puddings that are perfect for warming you up. Today's lineup is all about those puddings that make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. We're starting with a sticky toffee self-saucing pudding. It's squidgy, rich and perfect served with custard. Next, a classic bread and butter pudding. It's a classic for a reason, simple and comforting. And finally, we've got coconut rum and raisin rice pudding. It's made with coconut milk, so it feels a little lighter and it's spiked with rum to warm you right through. So whether you're treating yourself or sharing with friends and family, these desserts are guaranteed to hit the spot. Let's get started. Okay, let's get started with our sticky toffee self-saucing pudding. We're going to start by soaking our dates. Now dates add a lovely sweetness to our sticky toffee pudding. They're a classic ingredient and they're also adding a layer of moisture as well. So we're going to start by soaking them in some boiling water. So we're going to leave these to soak for about 15 minutes and they're going to absorb all of that water and then we'll blend them to make a really lovely date puree. While our dates soak, we're going to make our gorgeous sticky toffee sauce. So we're going to start with our ingredients all going into one pan, super simple. Start with some dark brown sugar, some unsalted butter, cocoa powder, double cream, and some just boiled water. Now this might look a bit strange at first, do not panic. It's going to emulsify together to become the most gorgeous, rich, sticky toffee sauce you've ever seen. And we're also going to add a generous pinch of salt. We always have to season our baked goods. Even if they're sweet, they still need salt because salt makes things taste how they should be. So we're going to go with a generous pinch. I also like to use salted butter in all of my baking because it adds that kind of undercurrent of flavour that you want all throughout your goods. And we'll just be whisking this together. And now I'm going to pour that back into the jug we started with and set it aside for later. Okay, so we've made our sauce and now we're going to make our sponge. So it starts very simply, classic ingredients, butter and sugar. In that goes. Now we're using a combination of dark brown sugar and some demerara. These add a really lovely caramel note to the dish and a little bit of texture with the demerara too. In it goes. Now's a good time to add any spices that you might fancy as well. Some cinnamon, some ginger wouldn't go amiss here. You can get creative, do what you like. And I'll be adding in a good pinch of salt because we are seasoning our bakes. What you're looking for in this mixture is a lovely light and fluffy combination. We're whipping in loads of air at the beginning so that we have a lovely tender sponge. We have our lovely aerated mixture here, light and fluffy and paler in colour, and now we're going to add our eggs. We're doing one egg at a time because we're emulsifying in our eggs, and an emulsification happens when you want things that don't want to come together, like fats, you want them to come together to create your sponge mixture. So we do this one egg at a time so that we help the emulsification process, especially with our whisking. You'll know if your emulsification or your sponge mixture at this point has split because it looks all curdled and weird, but don't worry, a bit of flour will fix everything. In with our second egg. And in with our dry ingredients. We've got flour and then some baking powder and bicarb for lift. And now we're folding in our dry ingredients. We're not looking to develop much gluten here. Gluten is responsible for making baked goods chewy. And whilst we're looking for a little bit of bite in a sponge, we're not looking for a really chewy, rubbery sponge. That's why we've switched to the spatula because it's a little bit more gentle than the electric whisk. So we've got a bit of a dry sponge mix at this point, but we're going to add in our lovely soaked and blended dates to add in that moisture. We have mixed in our dates, so we've got a lovely velvety mixture. Doesn't look too dissimilar to like banana bread. And now we're going to mix in some chocolate. Dark chocolate, but if you like milk, use milk. I've chopped the chocolate quite irregularly here, so you get lots of little pockets. So bigger bits of chocolate when it melts, and also the tiny little bits that melt all the way into the mixture. And that's that. We're going to get it into our baking dish. Okay, so we've got our buttered baking dish, and then all we have to do is add our sponge mix into here. Let's not waste a single drop. When I worked in restaurants and you would walk past your head chef with a bowl that you had cleared out of and poured into other things, she would always check it to see if you've got every last scrap out of the bowl. So we were not wasting expensive ingredients. So remember the chocolate sauce we made earlier? We're pouring it over our sponge mixture. It might feel strange, but it's going to create our velvety sauce for later. And now into the oven at 160 for 30 to 35 minutes. And here she is. This is our self-saucing sticky toffee pudding. I am so excited to eat this. We've got tender sponge and that oozing chocolatey sauce. So I reckon there's only one thing left to do with our sticky toffee self-saucing pudding, and that's try it. Let's go. With the custard on top, it is so good. Now, if you don't mind, I would like to be alone with my sticky toffee self-saucing pudding. For our next recipe, we're making a classic. It's a bread and butter pudding. Let's get started. Let's start by making our custard mixture. So to a pan, we're going to add some milk, some double cream. Because we're feeling fancy today, we're going to use a vanilla pod for our custard mixture. Now you don't have to use this. I know they're expensive. Plain old extract would work fine. In go the seeds and the pod. So the pod has loads of vanilla seeds left in it, so there's no point in wasting it. Get it into the pan. And we're just going to bring that to a gentle simmer. So for the next part of our custard, we're adding our eggs and sugar into a jug. We're going into a jug because it'll be easier to pour over the bread and butter pudding later. So this is 3 eggs and 1 yolk. 1 yolk extra for a little bit of richness. And then in with some caster sugar. You don't want to add the eggs and the sugar together too early on in the process because the eggs actually start to get cooked by the sugar. So just when the cream is almost about ready. And in some other traditional custard recipes, you'd probably just use yolks because that makes a richer custard. But for something light like a bread and butter pudding, we're going with whole eggs. I'm taking out the vanilla pod here and we're not going to waste it because, as we said, these are expensive. I like to make my own vanilla extract by adding the used pods to a bottle full of brandy or vodka. Add all of your vanilla pods whenever you've used them. Just give them a little dry off or a rinse under the tap. And then add them to your vodka or your brandy and leave them in the fridge and you have homemade vanilla extract. So we've got our cream and milk at a scalding point, which just means it's at a light steam. And now we're going to pour this into our egg mixture, whisking all the time so we don't scramble our eggs. A little at a time. So adding a little bit at a time is called tempering, and tempering just means to kind of introduce heat to your eggs gently so we don't end up with a scrambled egg. Whoa! And do as I say, not as I do. Get it into the jug, not the board. There we have it, custard mixture, with only a little bit lost. We're carrying on with our bread and butter pudding and we're going to be flavouring our currants. So we're going to use currants today, which is very traditional, but by all means get creative and add different fillings if you like. So you could do chopped chocolate, you could do mixed berries, you could do little fudge pieces. It's totally customisable to the things that you like, but we're traditionalists here and we're going to be using currants. So I'm going to zest this lemon. Orange would work really nicely too. Just half will do fine. And scrape that into our currants and mix them together nicely. I'm scrunching it in with the lemon zest so it gets lovely and perfumey, soaks up all of that lemony flavour. So we'll set these aside for later and we'll start on our bread. So we are using slightly stale, plain old farmhouse loaf bread and we've cut the crusts off so that we get a lovely soft pillowiness. And we're going to butter them on both sides with this adorable little butter knife. We're using salted butter here because, as I've mentioned earlier, we need to season our sweet bakes. And once that is buttered, we cut it into triangles, just like so, and then we rinse and repeat. We're using stale bread because it has a drier texture that absorbs the custard better. But if you only have a fresh loaf, then you could just dry it out in the oven on a really low heat. So we've popped half of our prepared bread into our buttered dish. And now we're going to sprinkle over half of our lemony currants. And then we will top that with our remaining bread. On with our remaining fruit. And then our custard that we made earlier gets poured all over this and we leave it to soak for half an hour. This means that the bread and butter pudding is tender and full of custardy, wobbly goodness, and also that the fruit doesn't burn, making sure that every bit of bread gets nicely saturated with our custard. So now we're going to pop this in the fridge to soak. We're going to leave ours for half an hour, but you could do it up to the night before if you've got friends coming around the next day. The longer the better, really. Our bread and butter pudding has been relaxing in the fridge for about half an hour now, so it's ready to go in the oven. But first, we're going to top it with some demerara sugar. And this just adds a lovely crunch to the top of our bread and butter pudding. Just make sure that every triangle gets a nice even covering with the sugar. To the oven, half an hour at a 160 fan oven. Here it is, our gorgeous golden bread and butter pudding. I'm going to serve this with lots of cold pouring cream because more is more. We've got a crispy top. Can you hear that? I hope you can. And a custardy bottom. Let's try it. This is so tasty. This is my ideal kind of pudding. Something a bit bready, a bit doughy, and covered with cream. You're gonna love it. And last, but certainly not least, we're making our coconut rum and raisin rice pudding. A bit of a tropical twist on a classic rice pudding. So let's get going. We're gonna kick off by making our rum and raisin syrup to pour over the end. So into a pan goes some dark brown sugar, some spiced rum. You could use dark rum if you like. You could even use brandy, and some raisins. This just gets cooked together until the sugar dissolves and we have a kind of viscous texture. So after about 5 minutes of simmering, we have this lovely viscous texture. It's thickened slightly and the fruit is plumped up nicely with the rum and the sugar. So we can just put this into a separate dish and leave it until the end. Into the same pan, no need to clean it, it's all flavour. We're gonna add some unsalted butter. And now we toast our pudding rice in that butter. This doesn't feel too dissimilar from making a sweet risotto. So it's very important to keep stirring your rice because we're browning the butter. And browning butter happens when the milk solids melt out of the butter and they start to caramelise and become gorgeous, golden, and they smell like digestive biscuits. So you'll know that it's browned when it's foaming, golden on the bottom of the pan, and you can smell a nutty digestive biscuit smell. And once that is ready, let's quickly add in our sugar. We do not want our butter to burn. And now we're going to add in the rest of our ingredients. We've got cream, we've got coconut milk, and we've got vanilla extract. In with the cream, our vanilla and our coconut milk, and a tiny pinch of salt. And we stir this all together. Okay, now we bring this to a simmer and let it bubble away for about 45 minutes, adding a touch of cream if it gets a little thick. So this has been bubbling away for about 45 minutes and it's become creamy, rich. The rice has swelled and look at that. It is absolutely perfect. Now I like my rice pudding warm, but you could serve it cold if you like, and this also freezes really well. So perfect if you're planning ahead and you fancy something warming on a winter night. All that's left to do is serve it up, and let's top it with our delicious rum and raisin syrup. Okay, let's give it a try. The rum and the coconut is such a winning combo. It's creamy, it's spiced, it's warming. It's everything you could want from a rice pudding. And there you have it, 3 indulgent puddings that are perfect for any occasion. Just look at that sticky toffee goodness, the bread and butter pudding, and the rice pudding. Comfort food, it's absolute best. If you're a fan of these desserts, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more content. And drop a comment below and let me know which pudding you'll be making first. And don't forget to visit goodfood.com or our app for the full recipes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.